Okay, so welcome everybody and welcome to Zibby Owens. Thank you so much for coming, Zibby.
Thank you for having me.
So by the way, I just wanted you to know that yesterday you inspired my daughter who is 12 years old. Look at my beautiful
I noticed
bookshelf
them.
behind me, just like yours. No, she literally took all of the books off yesterday and I said, she's 12. So I was like, you better, finish the project you started. And sure enough, she did. It's so beautiful.
I
I'm
love
so
them.
excited.
I think they look
Um,
great. They make me happy.
yours look beautiful too.
Thank you.
Um, So anyway, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Karin Gutman, and I'm the founder of Spirit of Story. So I'm a writing instructor, book coach. I primarily work with memoir writers through the story development process and the editing process of their books. And also I'm a big fan of creating community through the art of storytelling. And so these live events are one way to do that. So I'm really pleased that you're here, Zibby. Thank you so much. And I want to tell people a little bit about you. Zibby Owens is the author of Blank, a novel, which is just out. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Also, Bookends, a memoir, and a children's book, Prince Charming, and the editor of 2 anthologies. She is a frequent contributor to Good Morning America and other outlets. She's been called NYC's most powerful book-fluencer. Zibby is the creator and host of the award-winning podcast Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. She's the co-founder and CEO of publishing house Zibby Books, owner of Zibby's Bookshop, an independent bookstore in Santa Monica, just down the street, and the creator of the Zibbyverse, community of book lovers, for which she offers retreats, classes, special events, a book club, a writing group, and more under the Zibby Media umbrella. She's a graduate of Yale University and Harvard Business School, and she currently lives in New York with her 4 children and her husband. So are you splitting time here in LA too? I hear you're like potentially have a place in the Palisades. Is that true?
I do have a place in the Palisades. My bookstore is in LA. My husband's company is in LA. So when my kids are with my ex-husband and we have longer weekends, we go out there and, act like different people, I guess. Not like
And you
we
you come.
we actually we'll go to friends who invite us to their side of town because we can do things like that when we don't have our kids. So it works out well.
So mostly you're like kid free here in LA, and New
Yes.
York is where the kids are based.
That's right. So I end up seeing friends more in LA than I do here,
I
even though
see.
I'm here. But when I'm here, I'm mostly doing book stuff or with my kids. And
Got it.
contrary to my bio, I am not obsessed with myself or anything. It sounds like Zippy this, Zippy that. But we all decided it's such a catchy name and we wanted to try to differentiate the brand. And so we decided to sort of use my
Use your
name on
name.
everything.
Well,
But
it is a very catchy name. So yeah, I don't take
thanks
it
to
that
my
way at
parents.
all. Yeah, so it's on your birth certificate as Zibby.
Elizabeth.
Okay. My middle name.
Oh.
Okay, so you are uh very busy and you're on a book tour right now. And how's it going?
It's going well. It's a lot. I'm having a really hard time writing another book at the same time. That's the biggest challenge. I love doing my podcast. Moms don't have time to read books, but that takes a lot of time and prep every week, reading the books and prepping the books and then interviewing everybody. So, and then with the addition of the book tour and then all the other stuff, it's just a lot at the moment, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy and I had tried to write a novel, tried to publish a novel rather since I was 26, something like that. So I am sort of in a just say yes, do whatever it takes, celebratory. Yes, it's a lot, but
Mm.
I'm just so happy for where I am. I've worked really, really hard to get here, and it's, as you know, it's just such a joy to be surrounded by book lovers and talk about books all the time, and it's like a dream come true. So
Mm. It
never feels like
seems
work.
it seems that way from the outside. Dream come true. I mean, just
Yeah.
like in you, it feels like you're like exploding in every direction. I mean, creatively for yourself and you know, for so many of us too. I mean, I just feel like you bring such a refreshing spirit to the whole book community. I
Oh,
first just want to start by saying thank you, because it really feels like an injection of like, I don't know, a new paradigm, a new way of, enjoying the literary community. I just feel like you're such a big part of that, at least in my world. So,
thanks.
but what I find curious is that even in the midst of all of this, like you're already working on your on your next book. Like usually, at least when I've talked to authors before, that there's sort of the period of like finishing the book and then marketing it, being out in the world with it, which is such a different headspace than um and lifestyle really of writing and that kind of internal space that you have to inhabit as you write. So somehow it seems that you're able to do both at the same time.
Turns out, no, I'm actually not, but I'm trying.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, my book deal, I was actually just, so I sold the next novel on proposal to my same editor who did Blank and Bookends. And she's with little A, and she likes to have the next book sort of signed and ready to go when you start marketing the previous book. And I foolishly thought I could do this quickly because I do write quickly. And I had a 60-page outline, right? Like I outlined it to, I like character descriptions,
Mm,
sample dialogue, all the plot points. Like I just need to write the thing, I
mm,
just need to fill in the words. I have the whole story. But that's proving to be much more challenging, as you point out. Yeah, um, I have realized that if I am not putting it in my calendar, it's not getting done. Whereas other things do get done, like podcast prep and reading and
mm,
going through and curation. Like I don't have to put that in my calendar. I just do that all the time. But
mhm,
yeah,
mhm,
for writing, I need like a big block of time, and I haven't found them. And then when I do find them, like on a long flight or something, I'm like, oh, but it's not
mm,
quiet enough. Or,
mhm,
but I have all these emails I really have to get done. And then
mm,
I have like a free day, and I'm like, oh no, but like I better be with my kids. This isn't a free day. Like I should do all the, I need to be present for my kids, or a day without my kids. And I'm
mm,
like, yeah, but it's time I'm at the bookstore. Anyway, there's always something. In other words, I'm
mhm.
coming up with every excuse in the book. So, but I will get it done at some point. I don't know. I'll have to.
So, so with blank, you wrote because I mean, you're busy. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I'm imagining with blank that did you have to do the same thing in terms of like carving out the time, but it was easier somehow, even. I mean, I feel like you're
Um,
always busy is my point. So like what was different about the process of blank versus kind of where you are now? Do you know?
I think that I had more time to do it. I had a full year to write it.
Mm,
I wasn't doing all the marketing, all the events, all the travel for the book for blank. And I'm doing a lot of that. And
mhm,
I've prolonged it, right? It came out March 1st. So in the book world, I should be old news by now, but I'm like, who says? Like,
mhm,
why? Like, this is a great book for summer. Like, I'm not going to stop. So I'm still doing like two more big legs of my tour this week. I'm going to Dallas, Denver, Chicago, and LA. And then in June, I'm doing another big leg where I'm going to Virginia, two places in Virginia and DC and Kansas City and Indianapolis and San Diego. And, I'm just like,
travel.
yes, I'll come. Yes, I'll do it. So that's taking up the extra space, I think. With blank, to be honest, had to write like the final 20,000 words in 3 days, in one weekend, because the same thing happened where I was like, it didn't get done in time. So, um, I don't know. Maybe this is how I do it.
Mhm, mhm.
Who knows?
So who's holding down the fort at home? Like you have four kids who are still at home.
I mean, I
I
am
mean, of
I am
course,
holding down the fort.
well,
Um, but when I go on, like when I plan a week of touring, it's when they're with my ex-husband and he's taking them to Disney World or something, or you know, like so they're the big trips I do, they're with him. Um, but I'm, not to be gendered or anything, but like I'm the mom. I take care of everything still. It's like the
Mm,
book fair and the this and the egg drop, and I'm doing all the stuff.
mm, mm,
The camp forms, I'm like totally overdue on one, but so I am holding down the fort. On the day trips that I do, sometimes my husband comes with me. Sometimes if it's my custody day, he'll stay home, and we have a wonderful nanny who we've had since my big kids, who are about to be
mm.
17, were born, and we have family in the area. I don't know. It's the way we all get everything done, I
Right.
guess.
Well, I mean, those are huge pieces though, right? Like
Mhm.
having family there, having someone that you trust who's helping too. I mean, I think for I'm a mom, I think it's a big question I have. How do you kind of still move forward your own creative work and at the same time, you know, your professional life, business and still stay present as a mom. So
And I should also say they'll be 17 next month, but my twins go to boarding school, so
mm,
they are not home every day. And my 10 and 11-year-old are well, 9 and 10, almost 11-year-old are really independent. And so they're okay like doing an art project while I'm reading next to them. Like they're
mm,
not like so they're not the type of kids like my older kids were more, where I had to like be there and every second. Like they're cool just knowing I'm around and they'll
mm,
pop in. So
mm,
I still manage everything, and that takes a lot of coordination. But
mm-hmm.
yeah.
But they're
And
they're
I
also
think I think
independent.
also, I think this is how I do everything, which is when I'm doing it, like that's what I'm doing. Like right
Mm,
now, I am doing this with you, and I am not distracted, and I am
mm,
focused, and
mhm,
I'll leave this hopefully knowing you better, and maybe the people on the Zoom if they talk or
mhm,
whatever. And it's the same with my kids. Like we'll decide to watch Overboard together, and then we're all like cuddling in bed and watching the movie, and then I put them to bed, and we're like
mhm.
in it. And
Right.
then so
Mhm,
I think focusing hard on whatever you're doing, whether it's
mm.
a podcast or
Or
I don't know.
writing or
I don't
take
know. I mean, I make a lot of mistakes. I won't lie. Like I forget like the swimsuit on the new swim day. I make mom mistakes all the time. I'm totally not perfect. And um, prior to the tour, I never made plans at night when I had the kids. But now I bring them sometimes and they get it. And if they complain or they miss me, I'm like, I'm gonna miss you tonight too. But
mm,
I worked so hard for this, remember? Because they remember all the times my books were rejected and I'd lost the Webby Awards and all this stuff. And so when I went, or I don't know, they're like along for the ride.
yeah, and they appreciate what you're doing.
Mhm.
So can we talk about your publishing company a little bit? Because I am so curious, like how, well, maybe before we do that,
Mhm.
for those people who don't know you, can you just, because you have grown and exploded in so many different ways. I think just where did it all begin for you? Just to give a little thumbnail of that, with the
Yeah.
podcast.
Um, it began with the podcast, which
Mm,
I started in 2018, but it really, if I were to back up a little bit, I had wanted to be an author since I was 9. And I loved reading and loved writing from day one. I was like, this is what I want to do, but I didn't know how to do it. And it was a very windy path. Um, I wrote a book after college. I love entrepreneurial ventures of all kinds, and have worked on like the launch of a fragrance for Vera Wang and internet company launches in California and all sorts of products. And I love brands, and I worked in advertising, and so I have a background in that. I also find all that interesting, although
mm,
not as interesting as other people in business school found it, which is when I realized I should probably not be doing this full time. When I met the people even more passionate about it, I always wanted to write a book. I went through a period of a lot of loss in my life in my 20s, where my best friend from college and after college and my roommate died on 9/11. And I mean, I feel foolish like still talking about it. It was so long ago, but there have been so many massive national tragedies since, and losses and all this stuff. But for me, it was like this cleaving point in my life that has changed a lot of things. And I decided, if not now, when? And so I decided to write a book, and I got an agent, and we took it out on submission. I wrote the novel like 4 times, and it ended up not selling. And I was so humiliated and like devastated by that that I didn't try to write fiction again for over a decade. I got married, I had kids. I did ghostwrite a book during that time, which was really fun. Uh, but then I was in this marriage for 10 years, and then I got divorced, and you can fill in the blanks. It was, because I ended up divorced. So that was not a very fruitful writing time for me, and nor a professional time. And it was just in general a really tough place that I didn't think I'd ever leave. And then I did. And every day I'm sort of like still in shock and excited that I have another life. Like I have another shot at so many things. And now I am in love with my second husband, and all these good things are happening. But for a very, very long time, this was not what I thought was in the cards. And I don't want to give the impression that like things have been just going along swimmingly. There have been a lot of very dark times with subsequent losses. And anyway, it's been a journey like with everybody. But so for every success that's happening now, I am so excited and just beaming because I like didn't smile for a long time. So it means a lot to me, very, very deeply. And I feel it very deeply, and I feel everything very deeply because I'm a super sensitive person. So anyway, I got divorced. I started writing again for the first time essays, which I've always done. My first essay was published in 17 magazine that I wrote when I was 14. So I love writing essays. I just wrote one this morning. I just do it all the time. And some of those started gaining traction. I started writing for places like the Today Parenting Team and Scary Mommy and all the parenting sites. And then after about a year, my husband, now he wasn't my husband then, but he said, you've been writing all these essays, you should turn them into a book. And I said, ugh, moms don't have time to read books, which I thought was really funny as a title. And the agents I spoke to then did not think that was funny. And one agent said, you have no platform, and nobody wants a collection of parenting essays anyway, and you're not on social media, and blah 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 blah. And then another friend at the same time said you should start a podcast, which I thought was such a random suggestion because I didn't listen to podcasts. I'm like, why would I do that? I used to be really shy, like I was painfully shy, and in high school, I even went on this whole summer program once where I could not speak. Like I basically did not speak for 3 weeks, and spent the whole time listening and analyzing conversation patterns and just like marveling at how easy it was for people to speak when
Wow.
I literally couldn't talk. So the idea that I would have a podcast was kind of left field, but I thought I would investigate. And I've always loved authors and corresponding with authors. I had a pen pal relationship when I was 11 with an author who ended up coming to New York and taking me for tea at the plaza. So
Who's
this goes
that?
way, way back. Her name is Zibby O'Neill, another Zibby.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. She lived in Michigan, and YA author, but I was a YA, or, whatever,
Hmm.
middle grade person. Um, so
It's hard
I
to
figured
imagine that you were so shy.
I
I mean,
was.
you're just like effortless in your communication style. What?
Okay, so I wasn't, I think it, I was, it was social anxiety, right? Like I wasn't shy to like my closest friends, but in a group setting, I couldn't talk. I just couldn't talk.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Hmm.
I just couldn't.
And
I was,
what do you
I would
remember?
smile and laugh and, whatever, but I just couldn't, I don't know.
What was the do you know where the shift happened that allowed you to make a
Um,
change?
I mean, this is not going to sound good, but I discovered alcohol, and when I drank, I could speak
Mm.
socially, and so I did that for a while. I didn't have a drinking problem or anything. Well, I'd never had a drinking problem, but I definitely drank young and quite a bit, but
Mm.
not like at home and, in depression. Like it was
Mhm.
it could have been it would have been more convenient if it had been something prescribed, right? But it
Mhm.
felt like that. Um,
Mhm.
although then it took, now I don't need to. It took till I was like fully a grown up to go to an event without drinking.
Mhm. Mhm.
But a lot of people rely on that for social lubrication or whatever you want to
Mhm.
say.
Like a
But
crutch. Yeah.
like a crutch. But I definitely that helped me talk. But I was always writing because when I wrote, everything came out effortlessly all the time. Like as soon
Mhm.
as I would sit down to write, things just like flowed out of my fingertips. Um, which I felt like was such a gift because I had so much going on in my brain. I just like couldn't get it out. This is going way more, I'm sure, in depth than you had ever hoped to hear
No,
from me. But
no, it's okay. It's interesting to me because I think there are a lot of people who have, are, shy to, or, reluctant to expose or, have those. I mean, it's just remarkable because you're just at such the other extreme of all of this, of
I
this.
know, and I feel like people get the wrong idea about me. Um, and so I try to explain, like why I'm so happy now and all this stuff. But um, yeah, I don't know. I guess I need to do a better job. But
So there was like a bridge. It sounds like there was a bridge to kind of getting more comfortable sharing yourself, but you were always sharing yourself through your writing. Like
always, yeah.
yeah, there was no reluctance to
Mm-mm.
kind of share. Yeah, because I remember reading the 17 magazine essay. Yeah, you sent me a link, I think, a while back. But so and then how did you build on that? Did you just start experiment or just willing to lean into that more and more with
The writing.
no, I mean more yeah, being comfortable in front of people.
Oh, well, from the writing side, when I wrote this article and it was about how I had gained a bunch of weight after my parents got divorced, and eating is another theme I've written about a lot, wrestled with a lot. I'm very open that I'm on Manjaro. I've lost 25 pounds on this medicine. It's like life changing for me. And anyway, that's a struggle that now with this drug, like gone, no longer a struggle, like crazy. Um,
Hmm.
but
What does
I
it
wrote,
do? Does it suppress?
I just don't think about food anymore.
Oh.
I don't think about it. And when I eat it, I can stop if I want. And
Mm.
like, it's not a thing. It's just not a thing. It's the craziest situation as someone who has like, it took so much willpower to like not eat something or to, it's just not a thing. Like, it's just food. And that's what all the people have said all the way, this is what you should do. And I understand now what it must be like for everybody else forever and how they probably don't totally get what it's like for the me's of the world because it's just different. It's not
Mm.
just food. It's like an addiction of sorts
Mhm. Mhm.
that can feel quite out of control. But anyway, so that was what that piece was about. And I was a little nervous putting it out there, but also like proud that I was going to have an article in a magazine. But what I didn't expect at that time, and this is back in like literally 1992, was how many letters the magazine would get and the letters that I would be sent and how many people I ended up helping. And I love helping people and connecting with people and all that. And people really felt less alone. And I think that is what I try to do the most is every time I put something personal out there, um, even if it's one person who DMs me after or emails me or stops me in the street and says like, that really helped. I feel less alone, or I felt like you were speaking to me, or whatever. It's amazing. How can I
Mhm.
not do that if I
Mhm.
can? So I do, and you know, it's just, and I find it very easy. I find it a lot easier than writing these novels, which are much more challenging. I mean, they're okay once I'm like in it and in the zone or whatever, but just like getting in the zone is like, a cold plunge for me. Um, so yeah, I started doing that. I got a lot of positive reinforcement every time I wrote it, whether it was something flippant like doing step aerobics for my, college newspaper to decorating my first apartment by myself when I was getting married to like just like wearing the same bridesmaids dresses, all the bridesmaids by accident at a wedding, like all these funny life things. I just am fine sharing the deep, the superficial, just getting through. Um, so that's what I've continued to do, and I've continued sort of the reverence of authors, and that's why my podcast is so much fun for me. I know it's work, but getting to talk to authors and not being afraid to ask questions and learning about people all the time. I have this sort of insatiable curiosity about people. Um, and yeah, one thing has like built on itself. It started with the podcast. I got some higher profile guests at the beginning through friends of friends of friends, and then the publicist, found out about the podcast, and people started pitching me, and it grew and grew. And I started doing a salon series in my apartment here in New York City, and then it became book fairs. And then during COVID, I also launched a book club and an Instagram live author interview series, and I went to a daily podcast because I just wanted to help everyone whose tour was canceled. And I started doing
Mm.
original content and publishing essays of authors. And I realized how much I really liked working on original content with authors. And all these things ended up becoming bigger things over years. So
Mhm.
those original essays over years became a publishing house where we publish original full length works. And my salon events and the book fairs became my bookstore in Santa Monica. Like
Mhm.
I scaled it just without myself. And I'm still
Mm.
doing an online book club. And things have just
Hmm.
expanded. Like my retreats are now just like the salon series on the road,
Mhm.
so things have not come out of nowhere. And I've definitely tried a lot of things that have not worked along the way that I've stopped, or that have worked, but we've decided like aren't on brand along the way. I've assembled a team of really smart women who help me. I'm not doing this myself at all. Anne Massetti is running our publishing house. She used to run Viking and Anchor, and I have a fabulous store manager for the bookstore, and this woman Grassa is like head of retreat. So I have people head of all these different things
Mhm.
who sometimes applied for totally different things, but it's like turns out they're really good at this, and so that's what they're doing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because we just try to follow everyone's interest. And as I've, you know, I don't know. Anyway,
Mhm.
probably boring everybody here. This is
No,
way more information. I'm
no, I
gonna
know
get
I
salivating.
think what's
Does anyone care? Are you awake? Anybody awake?
yes.
I don't know. I'm so sorry. This is like deep dive into
No,
me, but this
it's
is
good. It's because what I think is interesting is that they're the seeds of everything. Those early seeds, like you said, the salon at your house is now has just, scaled it in these different forms, or the the essays that you publish for other authors has now become a publishing house. I mean, I think that's, the seeds really grew. You planted them and you followed them and you've continued to nurture them and be willing to grow with them. So, um, yeah, I mean, so as far as like diving into the publishing house, area, I mean, what I think is interesting too, and I kind of want to get your, now that you've launched the bookstore and now that the publishing house, what is it? Couple years now you've
a year and 3 months of books. Yeah.
right. Okay. So it's still early on, but like it is moving from kind of a passion that's just organically coming from you to now kind of moving into like the business arena and, having to, of course you come from Harvard Business School. So obviously you've studied it, how to build a business. What are you discovering as you go in terms of, how to, is there anything that surprised you that you didn't expect about what it means to make a publishing house successful or a bookstore successful?
Um, it's so hard. I mean, it's so hard. There have been many times where I've been like in tears, being like, "Oh my gosh, like what did I do?" But it's also very rewarding. But it's hard. I mean, the publishing is hard. I came in with a lot of things I wanted to do, and it turns out I haven't been able to do as many things as I wanted to do or try or whatever. Um, there are
Like,
some things about the industry that just, I can rattle the cage, but it's still not gonna change anything. It's almost like when your snack gets stuck in one of those glass containers. Like I'm there like shaking it, but a lot of the stuff is still the same stuff inside. I wanted to change all the stuff inside, but I might, this
You're
is
work
probably a
yeah,
bad
yeah.
analogy,
No, but you're
but
working with a industry that's been around and established for so long. So that's what's interesting to me. It's like, what did you want to come in and like, what was missing to you, or what did you want to shake up?
well, the thing that I felt most strongly about is something that we have achieved, which is making our authors feel valued, which sounds simple, but there's so many things that we do as, systematically, operationally to make sure that that's the case. Um, it really comes from a place of truth, though. I mean, we really do care a lot about our authors as people, and when we're acquiring books, it's also we are going to be spending a lot of time with this person, like it's not just about pages and words, it's the whole thing. And when we invest in a person and their work and all of that. What did I want to change? I mean, I wanted to change how slow it all is, but it turns
Mm,
out if you are going to go through any traditional sales channels and the distributors and the bookstores the way it's been done, which if you don't, then you risk not having that whole outlet, which I'm not willing to risk.
mm,
Then you have to sort of abide by the schedule.
mm,
Um, there were a lot of reasons behind some of the slower things, which I do see solutions to still, but they require such big changes that I don't know if like I'm the right like person necessarily. I'm going to keep doing everything I can, don't get me wrong, and I still
mm,
do like to um change things up, but I there the fundamental problem is there's an oversupply, right? There are too many books. Just
mm,
simple supply and demand, right? There are too many books, and I think not that I want to limit books, I don't, but there is a limited audience and the time that that audience has to read, and not only is the audience sort of shrinking a bit, but the time and attention is also shrinking, and the book quantity is escalating. I think that anybody who buys a book should get like a prize from the author. Like serious, I mean, the idea that
mm,
anyone spends 8 hours or whatever, like sitting there reading your words, it's a miracle that it ever happens anymore. And instead of being like, oh, I only sold like 113 books this week, it's like, oh my gosh, 113 people. Like, let's
mm,
just do like one of those montage in the movies of what it looks like for 113 different people to walk into bookstores and hear the clanging bell and pick up the book and decide, yes, I do want to buy it, and go to the cashier and get it home. I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot.
mhm,
It's a lot more than
mhm,
what it looks like when you see 113 and you see like,
mm,
the next author with like, I've sold 2 million books, and you're like, oh, well, gosh, I feel like a failure. I think that the model of success should shift a bit, to
mm,
remind us all of that. But, not that we don't all want 2 million copies sold, but it's just hard. So there are some things structurally that are hard. We do things like we're partnering with lots of brands, which is really fun. And every book gets a brand partner or two, and they help us with the book launches. And we do influencer boxes, and we make each author sort of into their own brand and help them with their own social media or whatever else that they might need. And um, we do all this extra bonus content for every book, whether it's specialty cocktails for everybody, and
mm,
all this like enhanced content. And then we take all our authors on retreats with readers for the Zibby retreats that we do, which are every couple months, and that's fun for the authors. They really get to
mhm,
know a group of like 50 people who then go back to their communities and talk about the
mhm,
books. And we plan really fun launch events, and I love like planning events and parties and gathering people and all of that. And the very fact that it's part of like this overall company that does not just that, but that there is like the podcast part of it, and there is
mhm,
that's like a
mhm,
multi point stop, right? The author joins this sort of
mhm.
system, not just the publishing, but
Right.
uh, this
This
whole
whole Zibby universe. Yeah.
world. So, oh, Allison Gilbert, oh, thanks for loving the launch event.
Mhm,
Yeah, we have to we're doing more launch events soon. And yeah. Oh,
mhm,
sorry, someone had a question. If there's one thing you could change about the publishing industry, what would I like to change the most? Um, well, I think the the issue that bothers me the most is that publishers by their own decision, by market forces, by, pressure from distributors, pressure from outlets or whatever, really have to pick like their lead titles. And I think that puts all the other titles at such a disadvantage, and it's almost not fair. Um, I understand why people want you to be like, no, no, this is the one. But you've already said this is the one by deciding to publish the book. And I think that authors then
Mm.
don't get an even playing field for launch when different amounts of money are being spent on different books, and you're you're limited as an author. Like your success is unless some lottery ticket type situation happens and like a celebrity picks up your book and loves it, which like almost never happen. I mean, maybe it'll happen. I mean, I'm sure it'll happen to everybody on the Zoom, but it hasn't happened to me.
Right.
But then, it's not going to probably sell 1 million copies, and you probably aren't going to be on the bestseller list unless your publisher decides that, unless you have a big deal publisher who decides that you are the one, or a big book club picks you, or a big celebrity picks you, then you're more in the pool with like sort of everybody else, where we're all swimming at like the community pool. Um, I don't know. It would just
Does-
be nice if the community pool had a few more lifeguards.
So, I mean, do you understand now, being on the inside of running your own publishing company, why that is, why they do pick certain lead titles, and that's
Well,
the
and by the way,
paradigm?
this is the system, right? This is not the fault of any particular person, right? It's not, it's because it's a creaky system carrying way too much, like I'm just going to go with these analogies today. Don't
Go
even
for
ask.
it.
This, like, the creaky train tracks with the train that's like loaded down, it's like the I think I can, they have like all the like it's about to break. So
Mm.
the distributors and like the salespeople who hit the road with your galleys in the back of their trunk, right? That's what happens as a publisher. I didn't know this. You probably already all know this, but as a publisher, you have to pitch your list way ahead of time to the distributor. So our distributor is Ingram, which is one of the biggest ones. It's Two Rivers, which is part of it. We have to go in and pitch our list up through next April or May, like next month or something like that. We've already done a preliminary pitch for those books. We are supposed to have had covers for all those books. Like those books should be done, which of course they're not, but they're close. Then the salespeople and the field salespeople have to take those copies if you have galleys, and they literally like divide it up by sales region and put them in the trunk. And then like the Texas rep drives around to bookstores and with the galleys and like calls on people like it's like 1922 or something. And yes, there are electronic catalogs now through Edelweiss and everything, and some sales reps do Zooms where you go through the catalog online, and that's great, but that's not always the norm. Like there is still this older system that is in place, and then the sales agents are the ones that they don't have that much time with the very busy bookstore owner, right? The bookstore owner is inundated because every publisher is pitching them with the online Zooms and the trunk of books and how much spots. I also own a bookstore, right? I own a bookstore in Santa Monica. We don't have that much room. So if we take a chance on a book, we'll maybe buy 1 or 2 copies, because how much room do we have? We only have,
Right.
1,000 square feet. So not even 800 square feet. So everybody is under pressure, and no one. And so if somebody says, oh yeah, I know I have 20 books in the car, but I'll tell you what, Zibby, I'm not going to waste your time. Pick this one. A lot of times people will be like, oh, thank you. Great. Done. Moving on.
I see.
Now I'm going to deal with like the returns for all the books that I did take a chance on that didn't sell, and now have to come out of our budget to return. Right. So it's just like on and on. So I think curation at every stage is important, but I do think not all the right books rise to the top. And I think that's the problem, is that sometimes people invest on what they think will sell, but nobody really knows. So is it just like this other book? Okay, romanticy's taking off. Like, let's try to sell every romanticy book there is. They're probably all going to hit. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to do that unless I have somebody on my bookstore team who reads romanticy and can tell the difference. But like, I can't tell the difference if I didn't have someone.
Right,
Anyway,
right.
I just don't think every author, and that's part of what like my novel Blank is sort of what I tried to do, poking fun at the whole system is like I wish discoverability were easier for authors because there are some real great books out there that I think are getting lost and not finding their audience, and I think that's a shame. So that was a really long
Yeah,
answer to
no,
that,
no, it's
but
great.
that's how I feel. I see a couple nods, so I know that people are awake and maybe agreeing with some of this, so
Yeah,
that's a
it's
relief.
really interesting to hear it broken down because I wasn't aware of that sort of chain of, you know, events that happens just to get a book in a bookstore. But is the bookstore really the goal? Like, I mean, I know you own now a bookstore, but I mean, in terms of you representing these authors and having your publishing company, is really getting the book in the bookstore the goal?
Well, that's another interesting question, right? And if so, which bookstores? And do you want the indie stores or do you want, I mean, you really want everywhere, right? The big box stores and the indies. And yes, you want your book in stores um, so that people can discover it if they actually go into bookstores. Now, go to bookstores constantly, and I've I have been looking for our books, right? But as I've been popping into bookstores all over the country, what I've noticed the most is how empty they are, right? There are not a lot of people there at any given time.
Mm.
I'm spending a lot of time in all the airport bookstores. But people are, there's not a line out the door to buy the books at the airport bookstores, right? Now, mind you, a lot of people are reading on Kindle or audiobook and whatever.
Hmm, hmm.
FYI, when you buy your favorite author's audiobook, it does not count towards their bestseller sales, just so you know, which is
But the
another thing
ebook,
that is
but the
not
ebooks
fair.
do.
The ebooks do, but so
Okay.
many people listen to audiobooks and think that they're helping the author, which
Mm,
they are. They're still helping the author's sales. But if you want your favorite author to get on the bestseller list, you're not helping them at all, which I don't think people know. I just think there's so much that people don't know.
hmm, hmm.
And also the bestseller list from the New York Times is only, from some select bookstores around the country, not all, and that it's still up to the discretion of the New York Times if they put you on the list or not, and what number. They just get to choose. They pick. It's like, and
Mm.
I don't think people understand that either. Like my book is published by Little A, my memoir and novel. They don't admit this. They say that they don't do this. They will not have an Amazon owned book on the bestseller list, on the New York Times bestseller list. Like, they will not, most indie bookstores will not sell Amazon owned imprint books. Um, just another one of those things. Like, oh, okay,
Mhm,
well, it
mhm.
doesn't
Good to
matter to the
know.
consumer. Like, the
Mhm,
consumer is not, doesn't shop based on imprint ever, right? I mean, I didn't know the difference between a lot of the houses until I got in this industry. Like, maybe I recognized it, maybe I didn't, made no difference. It's about the book, right?
mhm, mhm.
So this is another thing that I think some indie bookstores do, many, um, to try to get back at Amazon for destroying their business model.
I see. Wow.
But really, it's
Mhm,
like, kicking the knee of a giant. Like the giant doesn't care, and all you do is break your
mhm.
toe, So,
That's a good analogy, Zibby. Um, so what about separate from bookstores? Because I would just imagine, I'm just surprised when you say, yeah, the goal is getting in bookstores.
okay, I'm sorry.
Given,
I got off on a tangent. That
okay.
is one goal. That is not the main. I mean, that is one way that I think at a baseline it shows interest. I do think you should be in a book. I think if you can get your book in a bookstore, it helps because
Mhm,
there are people who wander around bookstores and might find your book, and you have to take that opportunity. Plus, authors really want their books in bookstores. I mean, I don't
mhm,
know how many of you are authors or want to be authors, but as one myself, I really like it when my book is in a bookstore, and
mhm,
um, there's something to that. Uh, but an influencer recommending your book or doing a reel where they pretend they're one of your characters is probably going to sell 10 times more books than getting in all the bookstores around the country. Um, the book club picks, I think, are still, they're still the best way, even smaller book clubs. But I don't
hmm.
know. I think, and I've said this too, like, well, what if we just forget about the bookstores? Like, then we could just publish books anytime. We don't have to rely on the model. And it's like, well, no, because then what about the publications? And, I mean, there's always an answer,
Mm,
right? Because then the publications are waiting for all the other ones, right? Like the roundups or whatever.
mhm, mhm.
And then what about the press? I don't know. It's just,
So, so you're working within, so you've decided as you kind of move your way forward to work within the system is, and maybe it sounds like maybe more internally how you treat authors is really where you're making a difference in the
Well,
experience of an author. Is that accurate to
I
say?
think we're investing heavily in every area, emotionally, financially, um, we in all of our books equally. Is another thing that we do. We don't have a lead title. We have one book a month so that that title can be our lead title. Back to my
Mhm.
point on discoverability. Um, we are touring all our authors. We're doing all the things that I think an author deserves to have done. Um, and the base minimum to give them an opportunity to shine. Um, like if a book doesn't hit it, not a list, I just mean hit public, like let's say we just, it's not going to be because we haven't tried our hardest, right? It's
Mhm.
not because we don't believe in the book. It's just sometimes books don't land the way you think they might for whatever reason. Um, but we're not going to stop trying. And it's worked. I mean, what we're doing is theoretically working. I mean, we've had 15 books come out. We've had 3 USA Today bestsellers. We've had a Target book club pick. We've had 3 book of the month club picks. Like
Wow.
we're out there. We're doing it. But it's hard. It's hard, but it's worthwhile.
And
And
is
there's
it
nothing better than, you know, an author just beaming or, the author telling us, like Emma Gray, who wrote The Last Love Note, who gets, other widows like all the time and just people saying how much she's changed their lives and she sends us notes and it's just amazing. It's affecting people and affecting people's lives and we're like magnifying that, right? Like we're
Mhm.
with every author, we're doing that more and having a hand in getting it out as far as we can. And I, as I said, we do like more brand partnerships, and now we've partnered with a bunch of hotels, so we're getting our books into a bunch of hotel gift shops and
Mhm.
curating hotel packages, and um, you
Hmm.
know, we're doing creative, fun things. And
Mhm.
for Pierce Oysters, our book coming out this summer, when um, the author was debating between publishers and she's like, well, and I took a call with her and she's like, well, just like off the top of your head, like what types of marketing? What do you mean by creative marketing? And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, let's try to do like pop-up oyster restaurants and like, let's do fun stuff. And she's like, what? Okay. Like nobody suggested. And now we're literally doing that this summer. It's been like a year, but we have all these
Cool.
oyster restaurant partners. So it's just like, why not try these things?
I love it. That's so cool. I mean, what are you looking for in terms of your list, or if, people here were to submit to you? What
Uh,
I know you sort of curate the year. Isn't that the idea that like, oh, if you were to read just 12 books a year, this would be like,
that was the goal
and now?
originally. Well, it turns out the person who wants to read the grief memoir might not be the same person who wanted to read the thriller, who might
Right.
not want to read the rom-com. So we're maybe that's one of those things that like isn't exactly right. But throughout the course of the year, we think everybody will find something that they love. That's
Mm,
more of the goal.
got it.
Hopefully more than one thing. We look for, what we say is like a strong sense of voice and place, propulsive narrative, beautiful writing. It really has to make you feel something. Like it has to, and it has to have really great writing. I know that sounds so basic, but
Hmm.
we get the topic, uh, and the topic, like even just the pitch letter has to be interesting in some way,
Mm.
different or not different, but it has to catch our
To
interest.
pop.
And yeah, it just has to catch our interest. Like, is it, is this going to be I don't know. This is such a hard thing to
And no,
answer.
I mean, I
But
think,
but women's contemporary fiction and memoir basically that's good.
and are you devoted strictly to women's voices?
No, we have a book coming out in February or maybe March. Actually, yeah, I think. Anyway, we have a book coming out next year by John Kenny, who is a man. It's great. It's currently called The Obituary Writer, and we'll see if we keep the title or not. But
Hmm.
no, we will take it by anybody. It just has to really resonate in some way, or be
Hmm.
really funny, or um, just makes
So you
you want
said
to keep.
women's contemporary fiction.
Yeah, so far we have stayed away from historical fiction, which may or may not be a mistake. Maybe we'll open that up and expand it, but I was just trying to make it simpler so
Mm,
that we could get more targeted pitches
right.
and um
And what do you think of the term women's fiction?
I think it's whatever. I mean, I don't know.
Really?
I honestly, there's so many big things going on in the world right now. I'm just like, you want to call it women's fiction?
You're like,
Okay,
fine.
I'm too tired.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine. It's like I don't know.
Hmm.
There's probably a better word, but until then, I get what they mean.
Okay. Um, so here's a question. I always feel like it's a particular kind of magic when readers find a book they adore and books find their audience. How do you find the audience for a given book? Does the predicted versus actual audience ever surprise you?
That's a great question. Um, yes. It does surprise me sometimes. Finding an audience is hard, and honestly, word of mouth is still the best way. Honestly, it's
Mm,
people loving it and telling friends, telling their book club, bringing it to book club, posting it. Um, people can tell when you really love a book and when you're just posting it to be nice,
mhm,
honestly.
mm,
So I think that the authenticity radar is quite high,
mm,
and people books find audiences when they have vocal proponents of them. And if you get lucky, it's someone with a wider audience to shout it to. But
mhm,
even if someone, one of the class moms in your class loves it, loves a book, like probably all the people in our class are going to read it. And then and it doesn't happen overnight. And I think that's another thing. Like it's not like when I had my books start coming out, I was like, oh, pub day. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen this week? Like, it takes a long time for people to read books. Like, the average person is not reading as much as the people in publishing are reading, or the bookstagrammers are reading, or getting, or the book talkers in their stacks every week. The average person, even a big reader, it's going to take a minute to get to your book. And sometimes that fire might, you know, the flame might take, what I'm talking about. It just might take a little bit.
mhm, mhm,
So give it time to breathe and catch on, is another thing. And keep like fanning that flame. Like don't give up if at the very beginning it doesn't take off fast enough. I mean, that's great when that happens, but it doesn't always happen like that.
mm,
And I also think a lot of older people are reading, and not a lot of marketing is going to older people, and that's a shame. Like we market to all types of people, and it's great if something takes off on Book Talk, and that's wonderful. But a lot of books are written from a point of view of a slightly older person, or a middle-aged person, or and a lot of older people whose kids are out of the house have time to read. I mean, honestly, I know my podcast is like a joke, but
mm,
it's a joke for a reason. And they're really smart, passionate book lovers out there who are really being ignored by the marketing machine, I think.
mhm, mhm,
So
mm.
I think it's important to pay attention to the people who are really buying and reading books.
That's a really good point. What do you do when you don't find your book in a bookstore that you pop into?
I cry, throw myself on the floor. No, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. And um, I often will like go up and be like, "Oh, hey, do you have my book?" And then they'll be like, "No." And then they'll say, "Do you want me to order it?" And I was like, and sometimes I'm like, "Yes," but then sell it.
Mhm,
um, uh, I try to I try on behalf of the authors that we publish and myself, because I basically have to distribute to bookstores myself, to, just it's a lot of it is relationships. That's the other thing I didn't think I learned about until I got into the industry, how much that matters. So getting to know people at all the different bookstores and visiting the bookstores. And that's part of the reason I'm going on this crazy tour all over the country, is I'm really eager to meet bookstore owners and
mm,
check out different bookstores and see what they sell. And like some bookstores, I'm like, oh my gosh, we just shouldn't be pitching our books to this place. They're never going to take X, Y, or Z titles.
mm.
Like that's a waste. And um, So I think it's also, it doesn't mean you don't have a good book. It has nothing to do with that. Your book might be great. Just so
Hmm.
don't get too discouraged, but really, you know, I don't know.
Hmm. So, did you use a publicist? Are you using a publicist for your tour?
No, I have in the past. Um, I had two anthologies come out and a children's book and a memoir, and I had publicists who I worked with on those launches. And at this point, I have my publicity team from my publishing house. They're
Hmm.
not pitching, but I like CC them on everything. And occasionally, if I'm like, hey, does anybody know, somebody in Philadelphia that we could pitch? Could you pitch me to that? Or occasionally I'm like, I'm too embarrassed. Could you just send this pitch to somebody on my behalf? So now I'm not really doing that. We are working with a man, Paul Bogarts, who sort of helps with the overall corporate branding theoretically, a couple of hours a month.
Hmm.
But I'm not working with a publicist on my individual title. But it's
Would you?
because, yeah, describe blank. Oh,
No,
yeah.
yeah, share a little bit about your book, Blank. First of all, it is such a fun, it's a perfect book for the summer. Um,
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
fun and lighthearted and just like definitely lots of twists and turns that keep you engaged in the story and then still like that kind of this deeper kind of messaging around publishing, which was
Yes. So the
layered
short
in.
version is that Blank is about a woman named Pippa Jones, who is not me, but we would be good friends. Um, she is late handing in her second book. Her first book was a massive success, got turned into a movie, like all the good things, and she was almost done writing a follow-up book, and then the biggest deal author on the planet like goes on TV revealing that she has the same plot and title, and so Pippa has to throw her book away, and can't like get over that and have to start over. So she is lamenting this at the dinner table, and her son suggests that she hand the book in blank as a joke. And she thinks, oh, that's genius. I'll hand it in blank and it'll be a commentary on the publishing industry because it doesn't even matter what's inside of a book. Isn't it just all about the marketing?
Mm.
So she does that and it turns her life upside down. So that's the publishing angle. But there's a whole other thing with her three best friends and her difficult marriage. And she has this side hustle as an undercover open house goer because I love going to open houses.
Hmm.
So she,
In real life, you do?
oh yeah, in real life I do.
I was
Uh,
wondering if that was true.
yeah, people are like, "How did you come up with that interesting plot line?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that was me also. That was also me." Um, so it's a quick read. It takes place over 6 days in LA, and you know, crazy things follow.
Shenanigans ensue. Yes. No,
Yeah,
it's
shenanigans ensue.
such a fun yeah, summer read. And what you said that fiction is harder for you than memoir. And so I'm just wondering why not just keep writing memoir? Like is it just the challenge of fiction and or is it what is it about kind of because it sounds like your next book is going to be fiction too.
It is. I do enjoy it once I'm doing it.
Hmm.
Um, and I enjoy having done it. It's like working out, except I
It's
don't
like
actually.
writing. Sounds like writing.
Um,
A lot of people like having written.
no, I actually really like writing.
Mm.
Um, I just have a hard time getting into it. But I enjoy it, and I think you can say a lot and do a lot in fiction that you can't do in memoir, and I enjoy that, the freedom of that, um, and it's fun.
Hmm.
And I know we're almost done, and I have to do a podcast myself in a minute. But someone said my book came out May 1st. I've sold 100 copies. 50 of those sales are from my mom. um, first venture into fiction. I wasn't prepared for the yeah. Any suggestions where to focus your energy? Yeah, I think the first thing is knowing you'll always have to focus your energy. Big house, small house, you're only as successful as you make the whole effort and you're teaming up with the publisher. If you sit back and wait, the publisher will do what they can, but it will amplify, 1 + 1 = 3 type of thing if you help as well. I if you have limited resource, where to focus your energy and resources, just try to get everybody you know to buy the book. Try to get anyone in your community. Try to get book clubs to read it. Go on different sites, go to events, meet other writers. Just get out there. Get to know your local bookstore owner. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and just think about all the different threads of the book. Where are the places where you can meet someone in their interest? What is it about your book? Don't just think
Mm-hmm.
about the book in its totality. Like, what about that storyline about the open houses, for example, which actually I
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't do. And now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm like, oh my God, why have I not been doing that? I should reach
Right.
out to real estate agents.
Right.
Um, that kind of thing. So just be creative in the marketing. Don't be afraid. Ask really nicely. Say, just be really respectful of people's time. Don't ever hand your book to somebody who's on their own book tour or
Mm-hmm.
like doing, it's really rude. Um, and chances are if someone's traveling, they're not gonna have any place to put your book. So ask if you can send them a book. Make sure stuff is via email. Um, none
Mm-hmm.
of you would be like this, but just don't be pushy and annoying.
Right. Right.
Just be respectful of everyone's time, and you'd be surprised how much people are willing to help everybody else in this industry. They really are. If you ask nicely and you're asking someone you know something about and can say to, Joe Schmo, like, Joe, I read your book or I took your class or whatever, and I'm a new author. Is there anything you think I should be doing, or could I
Mm-hmm.
get some, I don't know, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. It's a
And just say yes. I say yes to not everything, but
mm,
I say yes. I just zoomed into a book club at 10 o'clock the other night, half in my pajamas, of like 10 ladies in a living room in Scottsdale, Arizona. Why? Because I'm gonna just say yes. And you
mm-hmm.
never know. You just never know. So be really nice to everybody, talk to everybody, be appreciative, because it is a huge thing to read a book of yours, and just be grateful that we all get to do what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Here,
That's my
here.
2 cents. And
Thank you.
sorry for rambling. I had no sleep last night, and
It's
I hope that you all
it's
enjoyed
all
this.
good. We got look at the chat. Like
All right.
people
And
are
listen to
so
my
appreciative.
podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Every day is another author. You learn something every single day. I always ask about their advice for aspiring authors. I make them cry in a good way. They share things. And, follow me on Instagram. Do all
Substack
the
too.
things. Substack.
Yes.
That's
She's
it. That's my
doing
that's my
so
pitch.
many, she's doing
See, I
so many
asked
things.
nicely. I asked
Yes,
nicely.
you
Did it work?
and you
Okay.
said yes. So thank you so much. Thank you so
And I
much
said
for
yes.
coming, Zibby.
Thank you all.
All right.
Nice to sort of meet you. Bye.
Bye.